You cannot build that shed there. It is a clear violation of the bylaws.
Actually, I checked with the association. These documents provide all the requirements.
I can't believe it happened like this, but the HOA really just built a freaking storage shed on my driveway. That's right, the nerve of them. They did it without asking, without any notice, and honestly, I don't even know how they thought they could get away with it. It all started one ordinary Thursday morning when I was getting my kids ready for school. The air outside was that crisp, fresh spring air that smells like new beginnings. But I should have known something was off when I saw a truck parked at the end of the Cul De Sac. Then it hit me, the unmistakable sound of hammering and clanging metal. I threw open the door and there it was, a giant steel structure being plopped right on the strip of land that was technically my driveway. I wasn't the only one who saw it either. My neighbors started popping their heads out, and I could feel their eyes on me, like I was the one who'd somehow caused this chaos. I couldn't believe it. HOA built a storage shed onto my cul-de-sac driveway strip. My first thought was, are you kidding me? I ran down the stairs, grabbing my jacket, trying to understand what had just happened. I had been fighting with the HOA for months over small things like tree trimming and parking issues, but this? This was next level. It was beyond ridiculous. A whole shed right there, on a piece of land that wasn't even theirs. As I walked closer, the smell of wet concrete filled the air, and the metal clanged again as they continued their work. I stepped right up to one of the workers, trying to stay calm, and asked what the heck was going on. Without even looking at me, he just shrugged and said, "It's HOA orders." That's when I knew. This was bigger than just some construction issue. This was a power play. I stormed up to the HOA board member's house, hoping for some kind of explanation, but all I got was a cold shoulder. Mrs. Benson, the president of the board, didn't even let me get a word in before she slammed the door in my face. I could hear her inside, speaking to someone, probably other board members, as I stood there frozen, my heart racing. No one would even listen to me. My neighbors were either too afraid to speak up or they just didn't care. They all knew this kind of thing had been happening for months now, but it was getting out of hand. It wasn't just the shed, it was the constant overstepping, the little things, the way they controlled everything. The HOA was running the show like they owned us. But I wasn't going to let them get away with this. No way. I wasn't just going to roll over and take it. I decided right then and there I would fight back. I wasn't going to make a scene or break any rules. This time, I would go through the proper channels. I started to gather every single piece of evidence I could find: emails, photos, complaints. I lined them all up in a binder, looking like some kind of conspiracy theorist, but I didn't care. This was my home, and I was not going to let some small-minded board members turn my neighborhood into a joke. I knew this was going to take time, but I was ready to do whatever it took. I'd already started working on my revenge. The first step was filing the escrow file. I wasn't sure how much it would help, but it felt like the right move. I'd already sent emails to every single person involved, listing every single violation, every single moment when they overstepped. And there were a lot of those moments. I kept track of everything, down to the smallest detail. Timeline item 1, April 5th at 4:27 a.m., a false trespass call made by one of the HOA members, no doubt trying to intimidate me into submission. That alone was worth mentioning, because patterns of false reports can be prosecuted. I wasn't going to let them off the hook for their petty games. I kept filing complaint after complaint, with no response at all from the board. But that didn't stop me. Weeks passed, and nothing changed. The shed was still there, just sitting on my driveway strip like it belonged there. I could see people sneaking peeks out of their windows, probably waiting for me to snap, but I didn't. I kept my head down, focusing on the paperwork. I could feel the quiet resentment building inside me, but I kept calm, because I knew I was playing the long game. And that's when the payoff came. I managed to get a copy of the HOA's own construction permits. Turns out, they had never filed for approval. They'd done this whole thing illegally, and I had the proof. My heart raced as I scanned through the documents, each page a piece of the puzzle falling into place. The big moment arrived. I showed up at the next HOA meeting, file in hand, ready to expose everything. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck as the board members squirmed in their seats. Mrs. Benson tried to brush me off, but I wasn't having it. I stood up and, with all the evidence lined up before them, laid it out. The shed was illegal, their permits were falsified, and they'd broken multiple laws. I even had the photos to prove it. I watched as the room went silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. People started pulling out their phones, filming everything. The board was trapped. There was no way out. The reaction from the neighborhood was just as satisfying. Some of them were laughing, others just standing there with wide eyes, seeing the board get what was coming to them. Word spread quickly. People shared the footage online, commenting on the absurdity of the whole thing. The more I revealed, the more my neighbors began to see the truth. Mrs. Benson and the other board members were trying to look calm, but you could see the sweat on their foreheads as they realized they were done. And then the best part came. The police showed up. I had filed a formal complaint with them, and after seeing all my documentation, they decided to take action. The HOA had no choice but to tear down the shed. The whole thing was finally happening, the board's power was crumbling, piece by piece. I didn't just win. I made sure they knew it. In the end, the HOA was forced to pay for the damages and was heavily fined for their unlawful actions. The shed was torn down, and I could finally breathe easy. My neighbors came up to thank me, some of them even apologizing for not stepping up sooner. And for once, I felt like I'd done something good. I'd stood my ground and fought back with every legal weapon at my disposal. No drama, no violence, just pure strategy. Peace was finally restored in the neighborhood. And as for Mrs. Benson and the HOA? They learned the hard way that you can't mess with the wrong person. Please follow for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think she got what she deserves? Comment below. The payoff hit on May 22, 2024, at 3:14 p.m., like a scene from a comedy. The city inspector rolled up in a white truck and stepped out with a clipboard. The sun was hot, and the shed's cheap paint looked even uglier in daylight. Karen came marching over in sandals like she was going to yell the truck back into reverse. She said, "This is private HOA business." The inspector didn't even blink. He said, "Ma'am, this is a structure. I need to see the permit." Karen tried her usual move. She talked fast. She smiled too wide. She said words like approved in community and common area. The inspector walked to my driveway, measured the distance, looked at my survey flags, and then looked at Karen like she just tried to sell him a fake watch. He said, "This is encroaching on private property, and it's placed on a driveway surface without a permit. That's a violation." He taped a bright orange notice to the shed door. Karen's face went pale, then bright red. She snapped, "He's harassing the board. He's obsessed with me." The inspector said, "I'm here because a complaint was filed. You have 10 days to remove this and correct the surface." Then he looked at me and said, "If they don't, we fine the association daily." Behind us, 2 teenagers had their phones out, filming like it was a live show. I heard someone whisper, "Finally." By that night, the neighborhood app was on fire. Someone posted the video of the inspector slapping that orange notice on the shed like it was a gotcha sticker. Comments poured in. People I'd never heard from in 3 years suddenly had opinions. One guy wrote, So the HOA can build on your driveway but I get a fine for a wreath? Another wrote, Karen is wild. A mom down the street posted a slow-motion clip of Karen's face changing colors, and it got shared so much it ended up on a local community page with a caption like HOA Queen gets checked. I didn't post anything myself. I just watched. Quiet. Let the facts do the talking. Then Karen made her biggest mistake. On May 24 at 8:03 p.m., she called the police again and claimed I was threatening her. This time I was sitting on my couch eating cereal. I had my phone location history, my doorbell camera, and my email log all ready. The officers showed up, polite but serious, and I told them, I'm happy to cooperate, but I'm also documenting these false calls. I handed them copies from my binder. One officer flipped through the pages and sighed. He asked Karen, Ma'am, do you have any proof? Karen said, he's aggressive. He's a problem. The officer said, that's not proof. Then he told her, if you keep filing false reports, you could be cited. Karen stared like her mouth forgot how to work. Neighbors were outside again, phones up, the whole Cul De Sac lit by porch lights and gossip. The final flip came fast because once paperwork starts moving, it doesn't care about Karen's feelings. On May 28, 2024, the HOA got a notice of violation from the city, plus a deadline. On May 30, the management company emailed the whole board that the association could face daily fines if the shed wasn't removed. On June 2 at 7:10 a.m., I heard banging outside, and I looked out to see two hired workers unscrewing the shed panels in silence. Karen wasn't there. She didn't supervise. She didn't wave. She just vanished like a magician who messed up the trick. The shed came apart piece by piece and got hauled away in a flatbed like the world's saddest parade float. They patched the concrete, too, because the inspector made them. A week later, I got a letter saying my fake violations were withdrawn due to administrative error. Sure. Administrative error. Also, Karen's house sale? It stalled. A neighbor told me her buyer's lender wanted proof the code issue was cleared and the dispute was closed before funding. That meant Karen had to sign off on a written settlement that said the HOA would not build or store anything on private strips again. She also had to pay my survey cost $750 because the board caused the issue. At the next HOA meeting, Karen resigned for personal reasons, and the room was so quiet you could hear the AC hum. Afterward, Mr. Patel finally walked up to me and said, I'm sorry I didn't speak up. I was nervous. I told him, I get it. But next time, don't let one person run the whole street. That weekend, my neighbor brought over lemonade, and we sat on the curb watching kids ride bikes where the shed used to be. It smelled like fresh cut grass and peace. Please follow for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think she got what she deserves? Comment below.